Hey everyone, and welcome to my show. My name is Nick Elston. I'm a leading inspirational speaker, creator of unique mental health engagement strategies, a transformational speaking coach, and founder of Forging People, a community created to empower, inspire, and educate people who truly want to be heard in life and in business. On these shows, I bring you the storytellers, celebrities, speakers, influencers, entrepreneurs, those who have gone from adversity to excitement, who share their stories with vulnerability, transparency, inspiration, and most importantly, completely unfiltered. So without any further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of The Nick Elston Show. Hey everyone, a big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, Season 3, Episode 10. And today we're kicking off a week of a podcast a day series, which proved really, really popular last time. And what a way to kick it off today. We have the wonderful Rachel Vecht. Big round of applause for Rachel.
Thank you, Nick.
Hello.
Hi.
So our paths first crossed when we were both speaking at the same event for a mutual client, City Parents, and really liked the cut of your jib, really liked your vibe, and we kind of connected from there, and the rest, as they say, is history. So tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do. Think like The Chase, that kind of thing.
Okay, so I am from London. I've always lived in London my whole life, and I started out my career as a primary school teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. And I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And then 20 years ago, I had my first child. And whilst I was teaching, I realized actually that parents are a child's first and most important teacher. And whilst I could do as much as I could in the classroom, the vast majority of the learning was happening outside of school. And that's not learning, maths, English, and science, but it's learning about life. We all discovered a lot about that in the last 18 months with homeschooling going on. So I decided, and I used to provide a lot of support to the parents of my students. And I felt like I could have a bigger impact by working with parents rather than, having 30 children in a class each year. So when my son was born 20 years ago, I was very passionate about literacy. This is way before, iPads and everything else, and how parents can instill in their children a love of reading. So I wrote a really short course on a parent's role, and an investment banker heard me speaking, and he was like, would you come into my office one day and speak to some of my colleagues that are parents? And I thought it was a bit weird to go into an investment bank and talk about how children learn to read. So I was like, okay. And it got such a wonderful response. I called some other banks and then law firms, and 20 years later, 4 children down the line, that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. And then, someone said, well, how on earth do they teach maths? And how do I get my child to do their homework? And then how do I balance work and family? And it just grew and grew and grew. And over the last few years, we've just gone way beyond parenting topics, but everything that affects people in their home life, whether that's, you cover mental health, but whether it's disability or neurodiversity or talking about allyship or all those topics. But it's amazing. I'm really privileged. I feel really lucky to spend every day helping people as you do and talking about topics that we really care about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful thing. And do check out Rachel's organisation, Educating Matters. The links and lots of ways to reach Rachel are going to be in the bio. However, as you allude to already, is people that actively go out there to try to champion and support and help people as much as we can. We can have that kind of wounded healer kind of syndrome where we give and give and give and give. How do you protect yourself? How do you kind of put the right strategy in place to make sure that your self-care is maintained?
Yeah, to ask me that question as we're easing out of a pandemic, I really struggled with this at some points last year, even right at the beginning. So I don't want to go on about the pandemic, but before the middle of, when everyone else went into lockdown, I already had COVID. I had it on and off for about 6-8 weeks. And by the end of March, I had loads of clients saying, help, we need talks. How the hell are you supposed to homeschool and have a full-time job? And I had 4 children at home as well. And it got to the point, it was so intense that I was maybe doing 7 back-to-back webinars a day. It was insane.
Wow.
And then one day I'm making dinner, standing in the kitchen, and my 10-year-old at the time said to me, Mummy, you're spending all this time helping other people to help their children. What about helping your own children? And I was like,
wow. Well, that was the
I was like, ah. And so, you know, I love what I do, but there's kind of, when you talk about self-care, there's like yourself, your work, and your family. And very often, anybody with any care and responsibilities, if it's an elderly relative, even if it's for like a dog or a neighbor, you tend to put that element of yourself last. And I think it's like, I kind of see self-care as like, you know, everyone's got a different fingerprint and everyone needs something else. So for me, it's just understanding what is it that I need to stay sane. And I've tried to work that out. So I feel like I need fresh air and a walk. I do, although I haven't, this last few weeks has been so intense, but I try to do like a short burst of exercise. I know, like, I get so much energy from just even a short phone call with a really good friend that we can just properly, openly talk. So I kind of understand, but there's lots of things that I don't necessarily need. You know, I don't need to lie in a bubble bath, and I don't need to go to spa. That I'm not a big pampering person.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of understanding, and it doesn't have to be anything for very long. But yeah, I've got to remember, like, I speak so much about this, and I have to really remember to check in with myself and practice what I preach.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, have you? I haven't tried things like mindfulness and meditation, and I know people say it's incredible, but I just
it's an interesting one.
Find my own way.
By the way, I think they found you. I think the police have just pulled up outside just to give you a heads up. Run! But I think it's an interesting one, and you kind of really give it a lot of clarity then with what you said, that it's about that playbook, isn't it? What works for you may not or will not work for somebody else. But even within that, what works for me today may not work for me tomorrow. We've had lots of different people from lots of different walks of life on here due to the kind of diversity of my audiences, I guess. Whereas today, for example, what I really need is to hop on the PlayStation for an hour and just immerse myself in that. Whereas sometimes actually that can be a negative distraction. So it's horses for courses. And I quite like that, the fact that that's really backed up by somebody like yourself, who is that solution-focused angle, which I'm absolutely not. But it kind of validates that theory that I have, that we should relate our emotional well-being, our mental health, and how we're feeling about stuff to a battery. If we're 10 out of 10 fully charged, pretty much across the board, we're going to be pretty good. If we're running empty, then everything is affected. So it's what do we do to bring our energy back up when we need it the most? And that's really important.
The key thing is that self-awareness. Just kind of checking in with yourself, like almost every now and again, just to know where you are. And exactly as you say, what worked one day or what worked last week doesn't mean we're constantly evolving and changing.
And I think there's no apology needed for kind of mentioning the pandemic, because it's been, well, interesting is probably the most polite term. And interesting covers a whole manner of sins, but I've certainly had my worst days for many, many years over the past 18 months. And thank you for sharing what you've experienced as well. There has been amazing things. I mean, meeting you is one of them, but there's been amazing things that have happened along the way as well. But we've been through so much. And the reason why, I think when we last spoke a few months ago, that when I said the biggest challenges are yet to come, this is kind of what I mean. Because when the rules were in place, everyone kind of knew what to do. And now the rules aren't in place. It's very subjective. And it's become very passive aggressive in that sense of different opinions and views and stances and that kind of stuff. You can have a room full of 100 people and 100 different experiences of where we are right now. And that's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, It's true. Like I've been doing in September a lot of work around with our corporate clients on that transition physically back to work, which brings up all sorts of issues for people, whether it's the anxiety of literally just getting on a tube again, or if someone's quite introverted, all that social interaction, whatever it brings up for different people. But I have to say, as difficult as it was during the depths of lockdown and with everyone working from home, like you say, unless you were a key worker or needed to be physically present, we were all kind of in the same situation. I mean, everyone's got different experiences. Now you've got this combination of some people in, some people out, like this. No one really knows what this hybrid model of working means. And how, like, a lot of the work we've been doing is how to keep it inclusive, how not to forget people. So if everyone's logging into a meeting remotely, we're all accessing it in the same way. But what do you do if you're in a boardroom, you've got 15 people, you've got 8 dialing in apps? Like, how do you keep them included? And a lot of my work is around supporting parents and carers. And quite obviously, without wanting to make a generalization, they are probably, sorry about all these.
They've called for backup. They've obviously heard your trouble. They've called for backup.
Those are the kinds of people who are more likely to really want to have that flexibility to work from home. As opposed to like someone who's very young and new in the business and maybe, wants to have that physical presence in the office. And so my next worry is that how do we ensure, they're not forgotten? I've been trying to analyze why, the last 18 months was so difficult. And I think one of the main things for everyone, whatever age you are, like young kids, older kids, whoever, is the fact that it's dealing with that uncertainty. And I feel like as human beings, I mean, I'm like a very structured, organized person, but I think for anyone, just not even knowing, what's happening next week, or if you're trying to organize some travel plan, even in the UK, can I go, can I not go? Like, we're used to just being able to know what happens, and it's this feeling of not being in control that I think has been so hard to manage, but has also helped us to develop so much resilience.
I think you're right. I mean, the constant again, especially from the corporate side of things, when you have that kind of entry interview with new clients before I go and speak at their places, is that, okay, what are the common themes coming through? What's the biggest anxiety challenge, for example, or trigger even? And change is always number one, regardless of the industry, the sector, the number of staff. Change is always the biggest anxiety trigger. However, as we've experienced, change is inevitable. So absolutely is getting good with change, that resilience piece for sure. But it's also we try to control the uncontrollable. We try to control pandemics, other people, what they say, what they do. There's so much that's outside of our control, but that's where we focus. And what I found is that when people struggle with their mental health generally, the first thing they sacrifice is choice, how we proactively choose to go into each and every day. That's the only thing we have. Then we start to go the ebb and flow of life. And I think that's basically from the experiences of people that I've spoken to, that's been that lockdown experience. To start with, everybody, this is new and we've got to do this and that kind of stuff. But as it's gone on, people started just going at the ebb and flow of life and that kind of Groundhog Day mentality going on. And certainly in education, which we'll come to in a second, it's been really interesting that I've done more work in education this year than the past 5 years combined, because lockdown 4 hit in very start of January here in the UK. Be mindful to say that, so I appreciate this goes out everywhere. But here in the UK, lockdown 4 was the start of January. And I think that come at a time where naturally it's a more positive time of the year, kind of like that new year kind of mentality, we're forward thinking. And I think that was the toughest. And I think a lot of people experienced their worst time at that point, because I thought we'd just see 2020 out and then we're going to be okay. And it's taken obviously a lot longer. Has that certainly been your experience speaking to your kind of clients, both corporate and also personal as well?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you said there, one word that you used, I really wanted to mention. Have you ever heard of the book, The Choice?
No, I haven't, no.
So because you mentioned about this thing about being able to choose, so The Choice is a book written by a psychotherapist who in her 90s, who was actually a Holocaust survivor.
Wow.
And it's based on the idea of another psychologist who was also a Holocaust survivor called Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And this is something that I've shared with my own children and with so many people I've spoken to. But the essence of what Viktor Frankl says is that, and this is his experience of like living in a concentration camp. He's like, you can't choose what happens to you. Like, you can't always choose what happens to you, just as we're stuck in the pandemic. But whatever is going on, you always get a choice around how you choose to respond. So kind of between the stimulus, which is what is going on around you, and your response is that space, that kind of pause button to make a choice about how you allow that to impact you. You know, I was just having this conversation with my youngest last night because she's just started secondary school. And that, again, is a big change and transition. And she's like, I'm really tired and I find it really difficult and I hate lunchtime because, you know, I don't quite know who to talk to. And I was saying, like, there's a lot of, and you know, we make assumptions about what other people are thinking. And I was like, you are creating, I tried to even explain, even though she's 11, you've got all this kind of narrative in your head. And you think this person's thinking that and that person's doing that. And, you know, I'm already telling her now that she can change how she thinks, well, what other people are thinking. And that will change how she feels.
Yeah.
And that applies to any age group.
Absolutely. I think it's such a powerful example. It's something that even in a corporate environment, I shared this example that I clearly remember working with a school recently, and a girl said what really makes her anxious is when she messages a friend and a friend doesn't message her back. But that's not what makes her anxious. That's a transaction. What makes her anxious is the story, the narrative, telling herself about that.
Friends with me, or
I've been dismissed or judged or not loved, and that's what causes the damage. But I think that even though we're talking about kind of your youngest or the young lady that asked me that question, we can apply that to all of our lives, personally and professionally, by qualifying that stuff that we're anxious about or stressed about. Is this thing what I'm stressed about right now? Is it fact? And we can deal with fact. We can reach out for help. We can develop ourselves personally and professionally. We can get support and we can deal with that. But 90% of the time, if not more, it's the narrative. It's the story we're telling ourselves around that situation. And very often it's driven by that emotional kind of primal instinct that we're hardwired to look for fear and danger in any given situation.
Yeah.
And that's such
yesterday I shared something on LinkedIn about, because it's such a big topic, not something that will affect you, but about menopause.
Yeah.
And it had a massive response, like loads of people viewing it and liking it, and lots of people sharing stories. And someone in a very senior leadership role in HR wrote that she'd spent like not quite a number of years as she was going through that period feeling like she was failing.
Yeah.
But that was, yes, you know, things happen in your life. That's one example of something that might be going on, that impact on maybe how you view yourself. But I probably could guarantee that nobody else that she worked with actually that view of her. You know, it's just another example that you're in this moment where you're feeling not insecure, but just, I don't know what the word is, just quite delicate and not as confident in yourself.
And it does link into
that isn't how other people see you. It's just all in your head.
Yeah, exactly. I think that links into that kind of imposter syndrome thing, doesn't it? That I mean, that's huge at the moment, that even people that have previously considered themselves successful, it seems like this whole experience is dented not purely their confidence, but also their ability to see the positive as well as the negative. It's kind of like, again, it's further conditioned us to assume the worst. And obviously, we're recording this at the minute, even though it's going out in the first week of November. This is in October. We're having lots of conversations at the minute about what the winter is going to bring, but we're not thinking about, it could be okay. no, we're not. We're thinking this is going to be terrible
Yeah,
again.
it's
And
gonna
it kind
spread.
of it keeps that gloom in place, doesn't it? And that's quite hard to lift after so long.
Mm.
Are you truly being heard in life, in education, in business? Your ability to deliver any message with clarity, power, and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success, personally and professionally. Forging People, founded by Nick Elston, is an online community developed to empower, inspire, engage, and educate you to truly step up. Complete with online courses, early access to in-person coaching and events, free resources, and a community of like-minded people, Forging People will help you manage anxiety, boost confidence, and give you the tools to speak to any audience, whether it's one person or 1 million people. Speaking is more than just standing on stage. Speaking is business. Speaking is leadership. Speaking is influencing. Speaking is life. Contact Nick's team today on pa@nickelston.com or visit nickelston.com today to register your interest. This is the sign you've been looking for.
No, it is. And I think it's just focusing on the things that you can actually change. Like I always suggest to people, you might do this as well. You could kind of call it a brain dump. But one of the things, if you ever work with a therapist, they're not solving any problems, really. They're just helping you to recognize and articulate them. But, even for yourself, just write. Sometimes I sit down and I write everything that's running through my mind, just for 5 minutes. It's not a to-do list. It's just like, get it out of my head.
Yeah.
And then I'll take like 2 colors highlighters and I'll just highlight the bits I can't do anything about and the bits that I can actually impact. And I just try to ignore wasting too much time and energy on the things that, we can't control what's the winter going to bring. And if numbers are going to go up, and I'm just more than ever, I've always had quite a positive slant on life, but more than ever, it's a case of literally taking each day and each week as it comes.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's kind of idea. Fast forwarding into the future. Like anxiety lives in the future. It's all about what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a great idea about the. I need to get highlighters now. I'm going to put that on the station.
Or 2 circles. What you can't control.
No, so I'm an ex-stationer. That was my trade. So actually, I need some new pens. Everyone loves new pens.
I've got a whole drawer next.
Yeah, exactly. But it is interesting that, like you said, anxiety lives in the future, or on the flip side, on that regret from the past as well. And so you either end up with rumination or you end up with catastrophization. And very rarely do we, and we spoke briefly about mindfulness, and it's not something I practice per se on a minute scale, but certainly by focusing on the day. An amazing author called Dave Peltzer wrote a really harrowing series of books around his childhood experiences, but one of the really powerful things that stood out from his list of things at the end of the book said, live in day-tight compartments. I love that. And I think if we focus on that, absolutely we can.
Even more than just a day, like just whatever you're doing, like if you're washing your hands or brushing your teeth or eating, just to like bring yourself into.
Oh, absolutely. See, I'll be honest, I'm not that good. I have tried this kind of mindfulness thing on a smaller scale, but yeah, the day's small enough for me at the moment. But you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Now, your background, as you said, was in education. Tell us about that experience. How did you get into that? Was that always something that you wanted to do, or did you fall into it? Or
no, I definitely did not fall into it. I found my mum was clearing out the attic. She found a project the other day I did when I was 7 years old. It said, when I grow up, I want to be a teacher. A lot of 7-year-olds say that. But no, so I always knew that I wanted to teach right from a very, very young age. And I did some teaching in some really quite challenging inner London state schools. And then the last couple of years, just because I wanted to get some insight into the differences between the state and independent sector, I did a couple of years in a very posh all boys prep school with kids going off to some of the best schools in the country. But it was just an incredible experience. It's a really rewarding but really, really challenging job. And I just still can't believe I was speaking to my 18-year-old about this the other day, how, you know, doctors, nurses, teachers, you know, their pay compared to some of the, you know, I work with lots of big banks and law firms, and they're doing such an important job. But yeah, it was incredible opportunity to meet so many different people. And
amazing. Now, you also work, we both work on kind of the global level. How have you found kind of the cultural differences to not just a pandemic, but just mental health generally? To kind of qualify that as an example, kind of, I think in the UK, sometimes we've been, or very often actually, we've been conditioned to think that self-care is selfish. So we put ourselves before anything or anyone. We'll feel guilty, or we'll feel like we shouldn't be doing this kind of thing, when absolutely it's crucial. I know it's a massively overused adage, but that old put your oxygen mask on first to help other people, that kind of stuff. But it's interesting, when I speak to like US audiences, the dynamic's completely different. And you mentioned like counselling and therapy. If I say to a UK audience, for example, that every Friday, that's when I have my own counselling therapy session, is part of my toolbox to keep me well, that in the UK, they kind of think, this guy's a freak. He's just told us he has therapy.
Like how you would say, I don't know, where you buy your meat from. In America, everyone just says, oh yeah, what therapist do you
That's
use?
the thing.
I mean, that is generalizing, but I do see that different because I work quite a bit with the US. And like, I mean, especially over the last 18 months, my work has become so much more global. I've done, you know, I did focus groups in Poland or India. When you talk about culturally, it was very interesting working in India, because like it's very, very common now for both male and females to work. But when you get home, and this is what, I'm not making this up, this is what I was told by my audience, once you come home, even if you're working full time, the job of kind of house care, household duties and caring for the children still very much falls on, you know, on a mother, on a woman. Which I think we're moving away from very much so in the UK and the US. But I do think the UK are a little bit further behind in terms of openly speaking about mental health. Although for me, that is one of the real benefits of the last 18 months, the fact that we've had this real window into people's homes. Even for me, who, you know, I try to, because of my background, try to really have like open conversations. Some of I've got clients going back 18 years, and the conversations I've had have been so much, you know, deeper. They're sitting in their kitchen and we're on Zoom like this, or just I've developed a completely different relationship with people, because when you say, you know, how are you? People are not just saying, oh yeah, fine, or busy or whatever. They're actually answering that question.
Yeah.
And that's been a real plus side of this last 18 months. And I hope that we don't just rush back into our old ways where like, oh, I'm really busy is like the best answer to that. We don't really answer it. I think we've got a lot better at, you know, really being able to openly talk about what's going well and what isn't.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like I said, there's certainly cultural differences, but there's a lot of commonality as well. So if I tell my US audience kind of I have therapy every week, of course you do, Beardy Boy, everybody else does as well. Kind of get over it, kind of thing. And it is interesting, but some of my work is done as a speaking coach, so helping people to tell their stories. And again, it's given me a real kind of bigger reach, and I find it fascinating. Even yesterday, delivering a keynote talk to the Financial Planning Institute for South Africa. So these opportunities, and speaking is very much alive and well. Now, I know part of your armory is as a speaker. So again, if you want to connect with Rachel on LinkedIn, please do. The link's in the bio. So as a motivational speaker, how do you engage your audiences? I like to find out from other professionals kind of how you do what you do, because we know what you do, but how do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that my background as a teacher, it's funny because when I was a child, I was considered to be incredibly shy. In fact, I think I was very, very late to actually start speaking. And if you put me, I haven't had to do this for a while, but if you put me into a big room, like before a session, I don't know, a networking event or something like that, I'm fine once you start the conversation, but initially going up to someone, I suppose I'm more of an introvert, but then sit me on a stage of 500 people, or, you know, I was doing stuff literally with thousands dialing in. I don't even feel a flinch of anything now because I'm used to it, but have to pick up the phone call to like one. It's a really strange thing, but I think I just I see myself as an educator, and what I really do, and this is like even going back to what I originally studied at university, was history. So it's got nothing to do with psychology and all the stuff I'm doing now. But what it enabled me to do is to gather loads of information, because a lot of the stuff that I share is already out there. Like, you know, I'm not saying anything new particularly, like I haven't invented this stuff. But what I'm really doing is gathering loads of information, and of course now experience from, you know, speaking to tens of thousands of people, and trying to present it in a really accessible way.
Yeah.
So everything that I do, like my aim for any session is that people go away with a really practical tool, something like you can literally start as soon as I finish speaking.
Yeah.
And I want them to feel really empowered. And I think, you know, storytelling like is so powerful. That's what people connect to. Huge. So, you know, like I said, that story of my daughter in the kitchen saying what, you know, that for me is my story about have I got the boundaries right? And that's what people connect with. And I think it's really important as a speaker to allow that authenticity to come through. So absolutely. One of the other things that I do, and I've been doing for about, I don't know, also nearly 20 years, is on a Monday night, I run a group parenting course.
Okay.
And it's 10 weeks of me sharing parenting skills. But I say at the outset, I am by no means a perfect parent. Do not think I get it right all the time. I've read hundreds of books, and I can't tell you how many courses, but I'm constantly sharing the stories of when I've messed up, because people want you to be approachable. And the worst thing to do is have a motivational talk, where you walk away thinking, you know, bloody hell, this is completely unrealistic and unachievable, or feeling like a complete and utter failure because you can't do what this person is suggesting.
I love that. Thank you for your authenticity on that as well. And you're right. I think it's kind of quite a misconception that whether you or I take to the stage speaking about our kind of angles and what we do in our spaces, there is this thing like, hallelujah, they're cured. They know their stuff. Absolutely not. I manage my stuff daily. Thank you very much, kind of thing. And I think that's where that vulnerability piece comes in. As you say, it's a storytelling with vulnerability that really connects. It builds a depth of relationship, which is not just faster, but stronger and greater depth than any superficial or sales message will ever achieve. I want to talk about, kind of as we kind of come towards the end, I want to talk about your why. Kind of why do you do what you do? Because what I've found is a lot of people in the well-being space generally have reached that space because either they have had experience of having poor well-being or mental health previously, or they know people very close to them that have had that, or they've been through an adversity to reach that point. Has that been the case for you? And if not, what was your why for doing what you do now?
Well, my why, first of all, I because of my work as a teacher, I was recognizing a lot of the challenges that parents are facing. Like a very common one is just, how do I get my child to listen to me? How do I motivate this child? How do I raise them, you know, with all the qualities and characteristics that they need to succeed in life? So I noticed that there was kind of a problem that needed to be solved. And why I ended up doing what I'm doing is I also realized that I mean, this is getting very granular, but I didn't want to put all my effort and energy into teaching other people's children. And at the end of the day, when it came to mine, because I had 4, of feeling completely burnt out and I didn't have enough to give to them. So that's why I went into a career that enabled me to kind of have that autonomy and have my own hours and time and be my own boss. And sometimes that means it's more intense than working for someone else, but I can control my time. And I'm very much about, like, I do a lot of work with people, you know, about career development as well, and when they're going through big periods of transition. And I always get them to answer that question of what their why is. And also even like parents, like write a family mission statement. What are you all about? And for me, I could only do any kind of job which involved something meaningful. Like I've always veered towards, not because I've had a specific challenge, like everyone has challenges, but I wanted to wake up every day knowing that I may have the capacity to make a difference. I mean, that sounds really cheesy, but to just plant the seed of an idea into one person that is going to impact on their own life, on their relationships with other people, on how they manage themselves personally or professionally. And I get so much, I mean, literally joy out of every day being in a position to be able to do that. And that's kind of why I do what I do. And I was chatting to my older kids because they're getting to the stage they're at university thinking about what they want to do next. And, you know, one of them is very much about, you know, helping others in that meaningful purpose. And the other one, my older one, he's like, I don't want to work in an open plan office with 500 people. That's so not me. But his thing is about like connecting. And yeah, it's so important to kind of keep asking yourself that question.
Amazing.
And today, the beauty is that you don't have to kind of just have one job forever. Like,
no, exactly.
Our mindset around that. People, the number of people, I mean, how many people over the last 18 months have decided to go into coaching?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely loads. I can see them all on LinkedIn. But, you know, we're so lucky to kind of have this, be working in this space where you've got that opportunity.
I think you're right. And I think also it's important to recognize, and especially kind of people new into self-employment, entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call that thing, success really, it's kind of like a byproduct to the extent it's not part of a decision-making process. As successful as I've been by my own definitions and my own aspirations, there's not 1 week that goes by where I don't want to press that big red eject button and go and do something which is not visible all the time. And it's really important to recognize that it's okay to feel like that, because actually, as much as I love what I do, and I genuinely love what I do, the kind of the business element of it, not so much. That kind of
likewise.
The chase of business, the chase of money, and even though those things get easier as you have that kind of more visibility and more profile, it's okay to feel like that, because I think sometimes the reason why people don't follow their passion is because it gets kind of thwarted by the business element of what we do, especially in our space. So great insights, and you absolutely would have impacted somebody with today's episode as well. I know that for sure. I guarantee you will have. So thank you for that. So what's the bigger picture? What's the big plan? Do you have an outrageous goal or aspiration that you want to achieve, either personally or with the business?
I mean, I would say with the business, it's just being able to kind of scale and increase that reach. And one of the things I'm finally getting around to doing is creating an online version of my parenting course. I'm not every Monday night saying the same things, but people can access it anytime, anywhere. Great. So I'm kind of trying to do more online work as well, which isn't the same as that kind of answering questions and one-to-one interaction, but it's a way to enable more people to engage with me. And so just carrying on kind of being in the space that I am and broadening that reach and audience. And I also absolutely love to, because it can be, you'll probably relate to this, it can be quite lonely as well, you know, even though we're speaking to big audiences. And so I always welcome and love any opportunities to kind of work with like-minded people and connect. And that's the amazing thing. I mean, I've been having conversations with people in Australia, and, you know, the beauty of social media is, although there's lots of things I don't like about it, and I'm not a massive fan, but the opportunity to kind of connect with people that share your values is phenomenal.
Absolutely. So the question I like to ask all of my guests on here, and it forms part of the playlist right at the end of this season, is this. I'm going to set the scene. I'm now the MC of the O2 Arena. 20,000 people have come to hear you speak. You're sat in the green room, you're sat backstage, and you're kicking back, and you hear your walk-on music kick in. That's that song that motivates you, that lifts you, that gets you pumping, gets you ready to perform, gets you at peak state. What would your track be?
When I thought about this, I actually wasn't thinking about walking onto the stage, because I'm not sure the song that really, really gets me going, like we'll have a dance on a Sunday morning, and it's the beat in that song. I don't know what the lyrics would mean if I was walking onto a stage, but Stevie Wonder's Superstition.
Oh, tune.
That beat is like, I cannot stop moving. Like, it just gives me so much energy, but it doesn't really, the lyrics don't anything. And in terms of thinking about the lyrics, I would say, I think Stevie Wonder also sang this with Dionne Warwick, but that's what friends are for. Those words, like, keep smiling, knowing you can always count on me. I think that embodies what I am in terms of lyrics, but the beat of Superstition. But I still probably wouldn't choose that if I was walking onto the stage. Now you were setting the scene. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I can absolutely see you walking onto Superstition. It's a very bouncy track. It's kind of happy and jolly.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Rachel Vecht, big round of applause for Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick.
Absolute pleasure, and thank you for kicking off a whole week of back-to-back podcasts. And last time this happened, we were picked up by BBC, so you never know where this is going to go. But thank you very much for kind of giving your time to us to share your insights and take on the world. It's been a real pleasure. Personally, nice to see your face again as well, and hopefully soon, maybe even in real life, you never know. But for now, so Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for everyone else, please stay tuned for tomorrow's next episode. Another amazing guest to bring you. So that's heading your way very, very quickly in the next 24 hours, to be precise. But in the meantime, be well, take care, and look after yourself and stay happy. Take care, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye. And that's a wrap. A big thank you for tuning into today's episode. Please do leave us a like and hit subscribe for the fantastic upcoming episodes that I will be bringing to you, featuring more amazing guests. But for now, be well, be happy, be safe, and remember, as I always say, it's what you do next that counts. Until next time on the Nick Elston Show, take care. I'll see you soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.